Greetings and salutations, folks. I'm Curtin Davina, and joining me is Mikael,
Hello.
a special individual from a special studio who has worked on some special games all through the years. And that's an important topic because we were talking about the 30 years of Remedy. Do you know if Remedy has an exact birthday?
Shit, I actually don't know.
Is this like trying to remember like your mother's birthday off the top of your head?
Yeah, that surprised me. The trouble is that, I kind of came in late into Remedy. Well, late, that was 2001 and
Right.
so on. So I'm not sure if anybody really knows exactly when it was.
Because it started kind of like as if you correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it like sort of like not underground, but like a sort of like a group of people meeting up, making experimental games in Finland.
Yeah.
Right. And which
that's right.
Became...
Yeah. That's at least how the lore goes.
Lore.
Yeah, the lore.
So there's no proof.
Nobody knows. Exactly.
It's nothing but a whisper.
Yeah, the hazy early years and
a folklore tale of Remedy when people were emerged from the basements of a computer heated room. Then a Remedy appeared.
To my best knowledge, group of people in a garage trying to make games and so on. That's my understanding, and nobody knows exactly when it started, how it happened, and so on.
You've been with the company for ages, and you've come and gone in a really interesting way.
That's right.
So you said you came in 2001, which you started on. Your first project was
Max Payne 2. I was a gameplay designer. I always loved games, and as a kid, I just played all the time, all the different type of games. I visited my friends to play games and so on. Probably loved games too much, I still do. In the 90s, when Doom came out and Quake, I started modding, like making these kind of things by myself and so on, and I started to kind of feel like this is the thing I want to do. And when Max Payne 1 came out, I was like blown away.
I grew up in a big comic book household, and I always remember seeing the ad for Max Payne in a comic book of like that face and that thing, but at the time being like, this is the most amazing looking thing I've ever seen in my life. And then when I played it, I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever played in my life as an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress.
Well, there you go, right? Like I was kind of like, wow, can something like this actually, come from Finland, first of all, like, which was strange and weird and so on. So I loved the game. I loved the kind of combination of action gameplay with the storytelling that it had, the noir style, and then of course bullet time was amazing. And they released tools that allow you to mod the game.
Yeah, wasn't there like I remember there was like the Matrix one.
Yes.
Right? Where you could like, Max Payne could now suddenly be Neo.
Yeah. So I started modding the game and learned how to use the tools, and I started kind of write articles about it, like, hey, telling everybody else how to do it as well and so on. And Remedy catch that and then went into discussions and then eventually ended up joining Remedy and making games there.
I wrote one of my first video game reviews as like a little boy, as a little Kurt, on Max Payne on a website, and not of an official website. It was like in the 90s, I don't know, there was like GeoCities or something that was available. So I owe that game kind of like a first stepping point of me finding a voice in a way. And also cool. Like probably liking Humphrey Bogart and John Woo movies. So you did Max Payne 2. There's Alan Wake.
There's Alan Wake, yeah. So it's interesting, like my first game that I worked on, Max Payne 2, and it was fairly quick project, right? Like I think it like 18 months or something like that. Like crazy.
I remember that game came out very quickly after.
Yeah. And that was my kind of first entry point into the industry. And and I didn't know anything about anything, right? Like I like knew how to mod and do a lot of things, but learning the discipline, like finding that kind of a professional way of handling things, collaborating with others, and so on. So there was a lot of things that I had to learn, and it was a lot of fun. And my entry point in that was Max Payne 2. We knew exactly what I wanted to do and just did it and got it done. Then with Alan Wake, I think you had this kind of a classic like second album dilemma, right? Like we wanted to do something else, and we sold the rights of Max Payne already at that time. And we wanted to kind of discover like what is the new IP that we want to create. And it eventually turned out to be Alan Wake. And early on, we kind of spoke about it as an open world game, but then it kind of kept transitioning over the years, and until we kind of let's say found our footing in like connecting maybe these two things together, that there was this kind of a desire to do something more open-ended, but then at the same time looking back at Max Payne and seeing all the things that made that click, and bring them together. And that's how the idea for a psychological action thriller was born, which then, became Alan Wake.
Now that you're 30 years old, not you, but Remedy.
I wish.
One could dream. I think there's a way in which you can kind of track the evolution and identity of Remedy through 30 years, like you would a person, and kind of finding their footing and kind of discovering who they are and what they are. I have this like funky curt belief that in most cases when you're a child, and in most ways, you like who you are and your interests are cemented when you're a kid, and then you kind of have to grow up a bit to then rediscover what it was that made you happy. And you talking about like psychological horror and stuff with Alan Wake, I always find it interesting to go back because I replayed Max Payne 1 recently, and that game is psychologically very scary, and has this very unnerving tone that's like such a bizarre thing to sandwich with an action game. And I don't know if you agree with that, or seeing Remedy kind of start one place and then kind of go one path before kind of finding something maybe.
I think there's that's an interesting observation. I think there's a path when you look back at Max Payne 1, which was in many ways an homage to noir, and and yes, there was the Matrix action movie influenced John Woo and all of that stuff. And with Alan Wake, we were looking at Stephen King and just wanted to kind of tap into that kind of a type of horror, if you will. And I think as we evolved beyond Alan Wake, we wanted to craft more and more something that is from us. Like when you look at Control, for instance, the kind of a Finnish heritage and so on started to kind of come through with the characters like Ahti, for instance, so embracing that side. There's that kind of evolution that is happening.
It's like a self-awareness, or maybe an embracing of who you are. But in most cases, as a teenager, and this you can't really have you have an idea of what you want to be, and then it's not until your 20s until you start to have a better idea of that, which is right around when Control started to find its way and kind of come back into form. But that also kind of leaves Quantum Break in the middle of that. So how does that fit? How do you reflect on now, looking at Quantum Break and where that fits between Alan Wake and Control, and now what kind of Remedy is inching towards at the moment?
I think Alan Wake kind of set a kind of a tone of what we're excited about in many different ways. Quantum Break, I think, was a kind of a stepping stone, at least for me personally, towards the future of Remedy. And after that, immediately came Control, for instance. So a lot of the things that we were working on Quantum Break set a kind of a foundation that we wanted to explore further. There was a TV show side, for instance. So there was a lot of this kind of a predefined linear storytelling that we wanted to kind of integrate. And yes, you could make choices at the junction points and so on. So we wanted to give more agency for the player. But at the end of the day, it was a quite linear action experience. And I did like something about that direction, that kind of an element of an open-ended experience that we kind of explored early on in Alan Wake. And even though it wasn't the right thing to do for Alan Wake, there's something in the back of your head that kind of sticks with you. And I've always been a big fan of RPGs, games with a lot of agency and open world and with a lot of exploration and so on. Quantum Break ended up being a tighter game, right? More like a movie almost. And which was great. And we're proud of Quantum Break. But as we came out from it, I wanted to kind of find a way for a Remedy experience where we take that storytelling, of course, that we have, but find unique, exciting ingredients together with Sam that we want to bring in that is new compared to the previous games that we did. And at the same time, try to kind of go world first instead of it's all about this one single story. That's more like a world they're stepping into, filled with different types of stories.
Thus, the Remedyverse that has kind of manifested or grown or morphed and formed from that. But Control is that moment where I feel the Remedy house style was you take again, it's that you take everything that had been done before in Quantum Break, which was experimenting with FMV and doing actual live stuff, and then Control kind of found this moment where it's now it's hard to unsee. When I've seen other games no shade to those games, but there's elements they do. I was like, oh, I know where they got this. It feels like they got it from the Remedy house style. Would you say that's accurate? Would you say that like that's kind of a turning point when you guys started to find your like, we know what we really do sort of thing?
Yes, I think there's truth to that. We wanted to introduce this kind of a new factions and components into the universe, and Alan Wake already existed as a part of that, but we wanted to expand it, right? And what was juicy and exciting about Control was that you're kind of stepping into this place, and it's not, the place exists as almost like this, almost like a museum or like a warehouse of all kinds of other things that have their own stories, like the Optics of Power, or like this kind of a deep history and so on. So it's not just about this one single thing that you're kind of dealing with, but you kind of uncover a lot of more lore and mystery, and then yes, ultimately you find things that are connected to Alan Wake. So it became this kind of a hub for the universe in a way, the oldest house in Control 1, allowing like exploration into different directions. And there's the Ocean View Motel, for instance, with the different doors, each door leading to a new experience, right? Like it had the Alan Wake 2 door, and it does have a Control 2 door as well, and so on. So that's where things kind of started to go into motion.
Now, I mean, obviously you've come and gone in Remedy, but now you're here. You did Quantum Break, you did Control. You might be working on another thing or two, or maybe. What lessons did you learn when you were 30? Actually, an actual 30 that you think you could maybe even see start to happen, or maybe what if you were to have Remedy on this couch as an entity? And Remedy just turned 30. What would you say to them? What would you prepare them for?
That's a great and an extremely hard question. I think looking back, there's a kind of a Remedy that is a bit shy, like excited to try things out and see what happens and so on, but maybe a bit careful, like lacking in confidence in certain areas. Like looking at, let's say, Alan Wake and us trying to kind of marry horror and action and so on, try to kind of make them work together and so on, and trying to find our path through it. Again, like we did the right thing in the moment, but confidence, I think, builds up over time, or like, once you get more and more experience and so on. And I guess, and it sounds cheesy and so on, but I would say let's just trust yourself, right? Like you have instincts, there are things that you're passionate about, like you're invested in, like you get excited about this, and others will see it as well as you do it, and they will appreciate and respect that, and
do you feel like that's where Remedy is at this moment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very exactly.
I would say so. Does Remedy have like back problems? Like any physical issues that a 30-year-old might have to worry about?
Well, what we're doing right now is, there's this kind of transitioning that we've been kind of in over the last few years, where we're kind of changing from doing one project at a time into a multi-project studio. And we have Firebreak coming out soon. And we're working on Control 2, and a lot of things are kind of happening. And of course, and it's been, I think, a healthy, good process. And we're taking our time. We want to make sure that we're doing everything correct, because at the end of the day, the games have to be good, but no like major back pain.
So like the arthritis hasn't sunk in quite yet.
And not quite.
Maybe yet, not. Maybe never.
I hope so.
Stay young in spirit, and into the oldest house, find something that could maybe, I don't know, break the mold of time and space and dimensions and all that jazz. Mikael, it was such a pleasure.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing, and way to go on 30 years of Remedy. You've been watching GameSpot. I'm Kurt. This is Mikael. Till next time.